Buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving headfirst into the world of Native American mythology.
Ooh, exciting.
It is. You guys sent in some incredible excerpts from American Hero Myths, a real classic from 1882. And let me tell you, these stories are jam-packed with adventure, powerful deities, and get this, some surprising links between different Native American cultures.
Yeah, it's remarkable, right, to see these common threads weaving through cultures that were geographically and linguistically so distinct.
Totally. So where do we even begin unpacking this?
Well, one of the things that jumps out right away is the prevalence of hero gods. These mythical figures, they pop up again and again in different Native American traditions.
Okay, so like every culture has its own Superman or Wonder Woman.
In a way, yeah. But what's fascinating is how many shared traits these hero gods have across different tribes. I mean, we're talking North America to South America here.
No way. So what? Like they all have super strength and can fly. What kind of common ground are we talking about?
Think more along the lines of, they're often one of four brothers. There's usually a miraculous birth story involved. Many of them face some kind of epic struggle, like a battle against a monstrous evil.
Okay, I'm getting some Hercules vibes here. I'm into it.
And, get this, they're often associated with the East.
The East, like geographically.
Exactly. And that's no coincidence.
Ooh, how so?
Well, think about it. The East is where the sun rises. For many cultures, that direction holds a ton of significance. It represents new beginnings, light, knowledge. And speaking of light,
Oh yeah, it's like light is a thing in a lot of mythologies, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not just about sunshine. Light often symbolizes knowledge, creation, even civilization itself. It's often contrasted with a kind of primal darkness. you know?
Yeah, totally. Like light versus darkness, order versus chaos, that kind of.
Exactly. It's a fundamental duality.
Yeah.
And you see it play out in these myths over and over again.
Okay, so we've got these hero gods, often tied to light and the East. But this is all pretty abstract. Can you give me an example, like a specific story that brings this to life?
Sure. How about the Algonquin myth of Makabo?
Makabo,
Okay.
is that like a warrior god, a trickster god?
He's actually often depicted as a giant rabbit.
A giant rabbit. Wait, really?
Yeah, a giant rabbit who creates the world in this myth.
Okay, I did not see that coming. That's amazing. What else does this giant rabbit get up to?
Well, among other things, he marries a muskrat.
Whoa, hold on. A rabbit and a muskrat. Now that's a love story for the ages.
It might seem a little out there, right? But here's the thing about these myths. There's always something deeper going on.
I bet. So, what's the deeper meaning behind the world's most powerful bunny?
Well, for starters, his name, Michabo, is actually derived from Misiwabos, which has a bunch of different translations.
Hit me with them.
It can mean great, light, east, and even white.
Hold up. Light, east, white. Those are all the themes we've been talking about.
Exactly. They're all baked right into his name.
So, it's not just a wacky tale about a rabbit, it's layered with meaning.
Precisely. And it gets even more interesting when you look at the recurring symbols that pop up in these stories.
Oh, right. Like, we're not just dealing with cool stories here, but rather a complex system of beliefs and knowledge encoded in these myths.
You got it.
They're hiding wisdom in plain sight. It's like a secret code.
That's a great way to put it. And once you start to recognize those codes, those symbols, these myths take on a whole new dimension.
Give me an example. Like, what's a symbol that jumped out at you?
We'll take the Flintstone, for instance.
Okay, Flintstone, like what Fred Flintstone used for his car.
Exactly. Except in these myths, it's not about cars, it's about fire.
Right, because you can strike a spark with flint. So is it like a symbol of power?
It's more nuanced than that. See, flint sparks fire, right?
Yeah.
And what does fire represent?
Warmth, light, life. I mean, it's essential.
Exactly. And for many Native American cultures, that life-giving force, that spark, it's often linked to lightning.
Lightning. Wow, okay, I'm starting to see the connection.
Lightning brings storms, and storms bring rain, which are crucial for the cycle of seasons, for the growth of crops, for life itself.
So a simple Flintstone becomes a representation of these larger natural forces that sustain life.
You got it. And it highlights how interconnected everything is in these myths. It's not just about individual elements, but about understanding the web of relationships that bind them together.
That's amazing. Okay, so we got the symbolism. But another thing that struck me about these hero god myths was the conflict.
Oh yeah, there's no shortage of that.
Like constantly battling monsters or evil spirits. It's high stakes.
Absolutely. And it often goes beyond just fighting some external evil. There's this recurring theme of duality. Often, the hero god's biggest rival is their own brother.
Oh, right. Like a twin brother or something?
Exactly. And that speaks to this universal truth, this tension that exists in the world and even within ourselves.
Okay, I'm really interested to hear more about this duality thing. Got an example for me?
Absolutely. The Iroquois myth of Ioskia and Tawasgara is a perfect example.
Paioskiha and okay, that's a mouthful. Tell me about them.
Well, they're twins, and they represent completely opposite forces. Ioskia, his name is actually related to the word for light. He's associated with the sun, with agriculture, with peace, with all the good stuff.
Okay, so Isuke has Mr. Nice Guy. What about his brother?
Tawasgara. Well, his name is related to darkness. He represents the wild, untamed forces of nature. He's linked to animals, to the hunt, to conflict, even to things like disease and death.
Wait, are you serious? Their names literally translate to light and darkness. Talk about on-the-nose symbolism.
Right. But it gets to the heart of this idea of duality, this constant push and pull between opposing forces. And it's not just about good versus evil, you see.
So it's more complex than that.
Much more. It's about recognizing that these forces, even the ones we might consider bad, are essential parts of the natural order.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Like, without darkness, we wouldn't appreciate light. Without death, there's no cycle of rebirth.
Exactly. And these myths remind us that those seemingly opposing forces are interconnected, and they shape the world as we know it.
That's deep. It makes you wonder how much these ancient stories reflect the realities these cultures faced. They lived much closer to nature than most of us do today, so this delicate balance was probably something they saw every day. It wasn't just a cool story, it was their reality.
That's a great point. And it gets to the heart of why these myths are so powerful. They weren't just explanations of the natural world, they were also frameworks for understanding morality, for choosing how to live, for making sense of the big questions like leadership and the nature of time.
Okay, so it's deeper than just explaining why the sun rises or the seasons change. These myths were shaping their whole worldview. Now, you mentioned morality. Tell me more about this moral code you mentioned earlier. What's the takeaway there?
Well, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that ancient religions were all about, appeasing angry gods through sacrifices and rituals. But when you look at a lot of these hero god myths, you see a surprising emphasis on moral conduct.
Really? So it's not just about, like, throwing a virgin into a volcano to appease the fire god?
Uh-huh. Not always.
So what's the message then? What are these hero gods trying to teach us?
Well, often they embody positive values, things like courage, wisdom, justice, compassion. They show what it means to be a good leader, a good person.
Interesting. So it's less about blindly following rituals and more about striving to be a good person.
Exactly. It's about personal responsibility,
Yeah.
ethical behavior, living in a way that benefits not just yourself, but your community and the world around you.
That's really cool. And again, kind of unexpected.
Right. And in some cases, you even see these hero gods discouraging human sacrifice, which was pretty radical for the time.
Whoa. Really? That's going against the grain.
They offered a different way of relating to the divine, one based not just on fear and appeasement, but on ethical behavior, understanding our place within a larger cosmic order.
Wow, that's a powerful message. I have to admit, that's not what I expected at all. It really challenges those stereotypes about primitive religions, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
But okay, before we move on, I have to circle back to those prophecies about the hero gods returning. That just seems too juicy to ignore. I mean, I had to get interesting when Europeans showed up, right? It's like, talk about a prophecy coming true, right? I mean, imagine waiting for your hero god to return and then bam, a bunch of Europeans show up.
Right. It really makes you think about how these myths might have shaped how Native Americans viewed those first encounters with Europeans.
Totally. Like, did they think Columbus was a god? Or like sent by the gods? What was going through their heads?
It's a question that still fascinates people today. And it kind of ties into one of the big mysteries surrounding these hero gods.
Oh, we haven't even gotten to the biggest mystery yet. You're killing me.
Well, remember how we talked about all those shared traits? Association with light, the East.
Yeah, they were the good guys, often one of four brothers, usually linked to knowledge and creation.
Right. And often they were described as being, well, white.
Oh, right. I knew there was something we were forgetting. Why were they white?
It's one of those details that really makes you stop and think. I mean, we're talking about cultures that, for the most part, had never encountered Europeans before.
Exactly, and they didn't exactly have Instagram to share pictures back then, so where did this white hero god image come from?
It's a great question. Some people think it might have to do with language. Remember how that Algonquin word "wab" can mean light? east, and white.
Yeah, like it's all connected in their language.
Exactly. So it's possible that similar linguistic connections exist in other Native American languages.
So maybe it wasn't so much about skin color, but about a deeper meaning tied to those words, to how they saw the world.
Right. It could all be about symbolism. Of course, there are other theories too. Some people believe there might have been contact between Native Americans and other cultures, like ancient voyages from Europe or Asia long before Columbus.
Whoa, so maybe these ancient explorers inspired the myths. That's wild.
It's definitely a possibility, though it's hard to say for sure. The evidence is pretty thin, but honestly, that's part of what makes these myths so fascinating.
I know, right? It's like trying to piece together a puzzle, but we only have half the pieces.
Exactly. We get these glimpses into a way of thinking that's both familiar and totally different from our own. It makes you question what you think you know.
And that's what makes a good story, right? It stays with you, makes you think. This whole deep dive has been incredible. I feel like we've only scratched the surface, but I've learned so much.
Me too. It's been a pleasure exploring these myths with you.
And a huge thanks to everyone listening for coming along for the ride. Hopefully you've walked away with a newfound appreciation for the power and mystery of these ancient stories. They challenge us to look deeper, to question our assumptions, and to keep searching for those missing puzzle pieces. Until next time, keep exploring.